Thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Gnostic Connection. I'm your host and metaphysical detective, Damien Sebuyan. The Gnostic Connection is dedicated to the pursuit of exploring the esoteric behind the exoteric in an attempt to excavate the golden light of truth. I'll be aiming my metaphysical magnifying glass at world religions, philosophies, spiritual practices, scientific breakthroughs, and even popular culture. Gnosis is a Greek word for knowledge gained through direct experience of the transcendent. It's through the experience of the transcendent that the individual can most effectively know herself, and by extension comprehend the full nature of reality. As a Gnostic detective, my role for each show is to investigate a specific topic of interest, uncover its inner wisdom, and share with you, the listener, my findings. Feel free to accept, reject, or modify my findings as you see fit. For today's episode, I will be making the Gnostic Connection with the Cosmology of Desire. But before we get started, I'd like to set the energies with one of my favorite go-to affirmations. I'm a firm believer in using affirmations to help reprogram the energetic, emotional, mental, and physical bodies so that they are in alignment with my highest good. When reciting affirmations, it's important to be as present as possible. If you can generate positive feelings to use as fuel while you're reciting them, even better. To help amplify the power behind the words, I recite each line of the affirmation 3 times. The first time I speak them out loud in a normal but determined speaking voice. The second time I whisper the words. Thirdly, I think the words. But I make sure to think each word powerfully in my mind. I also close my eyes for the third round. Another way to empower your affirmations is to include tapping. I often will tap on my heart with the palm of my hand or lightly tap the space between my brow with an index finger. The most effective time to do affirmations is at night before sleep and soon after waking up in the morning during the hypnagogic state. This is one I've come up with myself, and it's easy to remember because it rhymes. Take a deep breath. This is called the love affirmation. Love empowers me to live from my heart each day. Love abides in my awareness in all that I do and say. All of my interactions are guided by love's way. Love reminds me that the heart of my work is play. Aho, amen, so it is. Since the topic of today is the cosmology of desire, I have 2 quotes about, you guessed it, desire. This first one is from Paulo Coelho, author of The Alchemist. A child can teach an adult 3 things: to be happy for no reason, to always be busy with something, and to know how to demand with all his might that which he desires. And the second quote is from Epicurus, ancient Greek philosopher. Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. Remember that what you have was once among the things you only hoped for. causeless cause. It is the numberless number wherein all countless numbers graze with the letterless words, formlessly unsequential, gazing upon the limitless light of the empty field of now's limitless potential. It is the circle with no circumference, the beginning forever swallowing the tale of its own perfectly silent telling, the ending in a perpetual state of nearly arriving. It is at once a starless, moonless, darkless night and a sunless, lightless day. It is a circle whose center is everywhere at once, and whose circumference is nowhere, forever. It is the three veils of infinite abstraction, the mystics in waiting call Ein Sof hour, negating all possible notions of quantity, quality, and mass. It is a boundless space of pure, undiminishable latency, pouring forth from nothing into nothing and generating everything that unites every timeline, every dimension, every level, every reality into infinite, eternal, living, radiant energy. It is the one and only causeless ingredient of subsistence which stands under and behind all causes of materialization. From out of this boundless empty field filled with invisible light erupts desire, the first emanation of Zero's Ein Sof hour. Desire opens Zero's mouthless mouth, so all of nothing can speak from its voiceless voice, the question that sparks all of creation with the meekest and most consequential of bangs, and takes all of creation to answer. Who am I? Once upon an astral projection, two aeons crossed paths while floating down the corridors of the temple of Amenti. "Sovereign Haziel," the first aeon said in joyous greeting to its brethren. "Sovereign Kaliel," spoke the second aeon, and observing that the astral light of his aeon brethren was unusually strong, he added, "Your astral light is bright, Haziel. May I inquire as to the cause of your stupendous glow?" "Thanks for noticing, Kaliel. I just finished another lifetime playing Earth on Kali Yuga mode. It's the most purifying of all the frequencies to play in, but also the most challenging." "Earth, huh? I've never heard of it." "I'm not surprised. Earth is only 4.5 billion years old." "That's so young." "Yes, it is. It's a very unique frequency. It's so unique that there's a 1,000-year training period." "I've never heard of a training period that long." "Some aeons believe it's not long enough." "Really? Tell me more about this Earth frequency." "Well, like I said, it's the most challenging frequency, in part because there is no astral light, so all beings feel a deep separation from the pleroma." "Separation from the pleroma? No astral light? That sounds horrible." "It is horrible, and that's just the beginning. Even after the training period, once you are born into the Earth frequency, you consciously forget all of your training, and you forget that you're even an aeon. Instead, because this frequency is so convincing at making you feel separate and homesick, you come to believe that you are your avatar, and so does everyone else. Can you believe it? Do you know how you need to build an avatar in order to explore certain realms? Of course, like in Malkuth of Andromeda. Yes, like that. So with Earth, after your training period, you build an avatar with a bunch of other aeons who also are playing in the Earth frequency, Kali Yuga mode. You build the avatar, and then your consciousness is shrunk into the avatar, and then you're born into Earth as a human. You forget your divine sovereign nature, You think that you are your avatar, and that's because the avatar suit, known as human being, living during Kali Yuga, is programmed only to recognize the material world detected by the limited information of the five senses. The only soul layer that your consciousness recognizes on Earth is the biological layer. There is no astral light showing you the way to the other layers, like the etheric layer, the spiritual layer, the soul layer, and all the rest. This sounds very confusing, Kaliel. How is it that your soul gets purified in such a hellish-sounding world? It takes a lot of lifetimes and a commitment to play all the lifetimes until you purify the karma that you generate while on Gaia. See, because you believe that you are a separate human living a separate life from all other beings, and because there's no astral light connecting everything, a human will get into all kinds of trouble. They will do things they would never even consider anywhere else. Oh, really? Like what? Oh, there's a lot of violence, addiction, thievery, murder, plunder, war, selfishness, anxiety, and boredom. Just to name a few. Because Earth in Kali Yuga mode is such a convincing reality, a human will do almost anything to protect him or herself, including and especially violate the sovereignty of other beings. So, somewhere around lifetime 600 or so, the astral light begins to become a little more noticeable to you. You begin to remember that you are more than the avatar. You spend the next 600 lifetimes or so healing the karma you created in the first 600 lifetimes until you finally wake up to the reality that you are a sovereign being of light, an aeon of the pleroma, playing a game called Earth. As soon as you make this realization, you begin meeting other avatars who have figured out the same truths. Their souls are equally purified as yours. The faults or shadows in your soul layers are impossible to notice in these upper realms. But when we go to Earth, we notice them more readily, and we can purify them, and in doing so, we receive and radiate more astral light, fulfilling the first desire of the One. Then the fun begins to happen, especially during the beginning few decades of the 21st century of Kali Yuga. What happens then? I can't tell you, Haziel, because I don't know yet. I'm getting ready for my next lifetime, birth date 1991. My avatar will be alive to experience either one of two outcomes for Earth. Either humans will evolve through destruction or through mass awakening. The game of Gaia asks this question of each avatar soul. Can the individual human who is completely separated from God find God within his or herself? If so, how do they do it? And most importantly, and despite all the violence and war and suffering it causes on Earth due to the belief in separation, can humanity as a whole awaken to its larger purpose? What larger purpose would that be? To accomplish what's never been accomplished in the short 4.5 billion years of its existence, to bring heaven down to Earth. It sounds so dramatic and fun. I think I'd like to go to Earth with you. I can't make that decision for you. I'm only an aeon, but you can ask your archangel if Earth is right for you. Earth, from the makers of Cygnus X1 and the Andromeda Galaxy. Choose Earth for a suffering that only ends when you realize what you've done to cause it. The Cosmology of Desire. According to etymology.com, the word cosmology came into existence in the 1650s, defined as a general science or theory of the material universe as an ordered whole. In 1753, the definition was updated slightly and remains in place to this day. Cosmology is the branch of metaphysics which discusses the ultimate philosophical problems relating to the existence of the universe. There are additional definitions, but that is the one I'm going with for the purposes of this episode. Therefore, the cosmology of desire is all about the role desire plays in the existence of the universe and in the everyday existence of the individual. And let me tell you, folks, it's a big one. In fact, I am confident in making the claim that without desire, there would be no existence of the universe to discuss. The word desire, no surprise here, is a French word. In fact, it originated from the Old French désider, poetically translated as await what the stars will bring. Furthermore, désider is derived from the root sidus, which means heavenly body, star, or constellation. Isn't that interesting? The very root definition behind the word desire evokes cosmic forces. It's as if, at the personal level, whenever we have a desire for something, we are being influenced by forces from the level of the universal. Think of that the next time you wake up with a craving for a quad shot at Brickhouse Coffee, and when you get there, tell the barista, "The stars sent me here," and see what kind of looks you get. Desire in its verb form means to wish or long for, to express a wish to obtain. As a noun, a craving or yearning, an emotion directed toward attainment or possession of an object, sensual appetite, physical desire, lust. Bono of the famous band U2 defines desire like this: "She's a candle burning in my room. Yeah, I'm like the needle and spoon. Over the counter, with a shotgun. Pretty soon, everyone's got one. I'm in a fever when I'm beside her. Desire." At the risk of getting ahead of myself, I would say that Bono in this song, which was recorded in the 1988 album Rattle and Hum, is exposing the archontic vibration behind the idea of desire. And by archontic vibration, I mean addiction. Addiction occurs when the desire of the individual, or collective, becomes trapped in an endless cycle of egoistic pleasure-seeking, resulting in arrested psychological and spiritual development. Those are the two polarities of desire. The force that drives our very existence is the same force that imprisons us. Nowhere are these two polarities of desire more intricately revealed than in the tarot deck, especially in the Magician key and in the Devil key. In the latter major arcana card, we see the Devil, number 15, represented in his most well-known satyr form, otherwise known as Baphomet. Along with being half goat and half man, the Devil has bat wings and an inverted pentagram on his forehead. He is standing on a pedestal to which are chained a nude woman and a nude man, as if to show that he has dominion over them. Both the man and the woman have horns, as if to show that the more time they spend with the Devil, the less human they become. The chains make it appear as though the Devil has taken them captive. The man has a flame on his tail, while a woman has a bowl of grapes on her tail, which symbolizes their addiction to power and finer things in life, respectively. Looking closely, both the man and the woman don't look happy. Their individual power has been taken from them, leaving them exposed and ashamed in their nakedness. The power that's been taken from them is their desire force. The Devil represents the inverted notion of desire, the one that has plagued humanity for centuries and is derived from the notion that our reality is based on the limited information received from our five senses. It's desire that is perceptually chained in the material world, a material world that is designed to distract us from the one true desire, which is the desire to remember who we truly are. As long as we identify with the body alone and the thoughts and emotions that course through our senses of awareness, we risk being chained to our baser desires, and all our choices are then motivated by fulfilling them. As long as our time and energy is filled with fulfilling the desires of our baser natures, our search for truth and gnosis is stunted. The Devil card also represents the belief that all existence is material in nature and that consciousness is localized to the individual brain. In other words, I am a product of my environment, and all the choices I make must be decided by the parameters of that environment. The Buddha expresses how the devil works in the world in the following words from the Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha. One who lives for pleasure, senses unchecked, who eats too much, works too little, and lacks vital energy, is bent to the intent of Mara, the beguiler, just as a weak tree is bent by wind. Mara is the Eastern equivalent to the devil here. One who is unmoved by pleasure, senses restrained, who eats in moderation, works diligently, and retains vital energy, is not beguiled by Mara, just as a rock is not ruffled by wind. One who takes the unreal to be real will never see the real, being beguiled by the unreal. One who knows the unreal is not real will come to see the real, being no longer beguiled by the unreal. Desire permeates a clouded mind, as rain permeates a badly thatched house. Desire does not permeate a clear mind, as rain does not permeate a well-thatched house. So, a remedy to the lies of the Devil card can be found in the tarot key numbered 1, the Magician. The Magician card depicts a figure dressed in a white tunic with red robes. His right hand holds a wand that is pointed upwards towards a canopy of red roses. His left hand points downward towards a bed of red roses and white lilies. Beside him is a table upon which rests another wand, a chalice, a sword, and a pentacle, the symbols of the 4 elements and the 4 bodies. The figure of the magician and also the symbology behind the card informs us about how we can most effectively use the desire force for our highest good. When we align our 4 bodies, the energetic, emotional, mental, and physical bodies, into one full body of focused concentration, we can create the world that we most strongly desire, knowing that what we create will ultimately reflect back onto us in some way. The roses above the magician's head are the same roses that are blooming at the magician's feet. In other words, the magician reaped exactly what he sowed. We know that the magician's desires are pure due to the presence of the white lilies. The magician understands that all is mind, and that all appearances of matter spring from the one mind in accordance to the 6 other Hermetic principles, specifically the law of correspondence, which states, "The above is of the below, and the below is of the above," more popularly phrased, "As above, so below." The Buddha expressed this principle very eloquently in the Dhammapada. The experience of life is created by mind. Thought precedes experience. If one speaks and acts with a clouded mind, suffering follows, as the wheel of the ox cart follows the ox. The experience of life is created by mind. Thought precedes experience. If one speaks and acts with a clear mind, contentment follows like a faithful shadow. I will be investigating this paradox of desire through the lens of Hermetic Kabbalah and Tarot, which are linked together with Western astrology, palmistry, and spiritual alchemy in what one of my primary teachers called ageless wisdom. At the heart of Hermetic Kabbalah lies the Tree of Life, which represents the cosmic order and the pathway to spiritual enlightenment. With its complex system of sephirot, spheres, and paths, Hermetic Kabbalah provides a framework for understanding the relationship between the divine and the mundane. This perspective is not just theoretical. It has practical implications for spiritual practices and the quest for higher knowledge. In Hermetic Kabbalah, the Tree of Life represents all of creation, both at the macrocosmic level and the microcosmic level. The universe is its own tree, and each individual living being has its own tree, and all the trees are connected and exist within each other, not unlike the phenomenon of interconnected existence portrayed in the Hindu myth of Indra's net. Thus, the nature of the Tree of Life is fractal and holographic. The structure of the Tree of Life is a symbolic representation of the divine, consisting of 10 circles of spheres known as sephirot, which are connected by 22 paths. Each sephirot represents a different aspect of the divine or a specific attribute of God, and the paths symbolize the relationships and interactions between these aspects. The Tree of Life is not just a static symbol, it is a dynamic map that guides the seeker through the various stages of spiritual understanding and connection with the divine. The tree is composed of 10 circles, called sephirot, organized in 3 columns and connected by 22 paths, and when visualized or drawn, each sephirot appears in the form of a circle. These sephiroth are emanations from the 3 aspects or veils of Source, and they're called Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Hour. It's pretty complicated, but the 3 aspects are not separate ideas or entities. They are characteristics of the same essence, which we might call Source, or God, or the One. In other words, Source, desired, Gnosis, and we are the result of that desire. The idea behind creation is that the Eternal One, or God, was just being God. There was nothing happening, God was just being. Then, out of nowhere, desire sparked into animate existence, the kind of desire that science describes as the Big Bang. There is much debate among metaphysicians about the characterization of Source's first Big Bang desire, but it's my contention that the first desire was the desire of Source to know or experience itself. From that desire, all of creation, as we know it, sprang into existence. Kabbalah tells the story and shows the way from oneness into differentiated separate individuality, and back from differentiated separate individuality to oneness, or Source. That is the entire purpose of life. We come to Earth to learn that we are not separate beings, but expressions of the divine. We don't so much learn it as we remember it. The challenge, and it's a big one, is that this plane of existence we call planet Earth is designed or programmed to keep us locked into separateness so that we can never return to Source. At the soul-spirit level, we all know this is part of the game. We chose to come here to experience the trap of separateness, to see how long, how many lifetimes it would take us to figure it all out. How did we get locked into separateness? through corruption of the desire force at the individual and collective levels. What this looks like is what you can watch on the news every day: war, famine, pollution, violence, fear, division. And in between those news stories are commercials tempting you to buy things that will improve your life and make you better than your neighbors. The news and commercial media doesn't just report on these phenomenon, it amplifies them, and by extension, helps to keep them going strong in the zeitgeist of humanity. Mundane desires. Since Kabbalah is a relationship between the divine and the mundane, let's look at mundane desires. Mundane desires are everyday desires, many of which we don't even notice. For most of us, they're active at the subconscious level, in part because they've been programmed into us through repeated patterning and through biological imperative. If you pay attention to the little details of the activities of a single day, you'll discover, like I have, that desire isn't so much an emotion that comes and goes. Rather, it is a force or energy that is perpetually and actively incentivizing all of our impulses, feelings, thoughts, and actions as we interact with the world. The common or mundane definition of the word desire is to wish or long for, to want. Many of the things we wish or long for change over time as we theoretically mature. When I was 9 years old, I wanted to have a pet dragon. When I was 16, that desire changed to something a little more realistic, a car. But what I really wanted was to be cool and to attract members of the opposite sex in large number, like flocks of 3 or 4. In my mind, having a car would fulfill that desire. Imagine this Don Juan entrance: a pimply teenager with John Lennon glasses too big for his face, a chaotic mop of a mullet for hair, dressed in a gray, grease-stained, untucked button-down shirt and a black, oversized, unzipped aviator jacket that practically pours over his incredibly sexy brown high-water corduroy pants. Now, imagine this impeccable specimen of a man stepping out of his hubcapless, Hulk green 1980 two-door VW Rabbit. I mean, talk about desire. Unfortunately for me, nobody got the memo. And since I was the only one in my nerdy Dungeons & Dragons friends group and to own a car, I was the one taking everyone everywhere. None of those people were girls, and none of those places we ever went contained girls. Then, just as I was getting fond of having my own wheels, I even nicknamed her the Green Machine, because it was green, and green rhymes with machine. Very original, Anyway, I was bonding with the Green Machine, my Irish twin brother, who had just earned his permit, took her out for a spin during a snowstorm. He returned without a scratch, but the Green Machine was gone for good, eaten by a 12-foot-high snowdrift. My new desire presented itself immediately. Kill my brother. But they had laws against that kind of behavior, even in the 80s, so yet another desire of mine went unmet. When I woke up this morning, desire was right there with me. The desire for coffee with a shot of espresso topped with whipped cream was especially prominent. The desire blossomed to include a freshly heated butter croissant. Side note, isn't it a bit redundant to qualify a croissant with the word butter when we all know that an entire stick of butter died in the making of that single delicious pastry? I mean, you may as well say, I had some bread with my stick of butter this morning. Oh, how I love the French. Anyway, so there I was, desiring my go-to comfort breakfast, when out of left brain field came another competing desire. The desire spoke to me in the second person. If you're going to the gym this morning, maybe you should postpone the coffee and have a protein shake instead. For those of us on any sort of path towards better health, this dynamic of being talked down to by our higher self can be a little much. Nevertheless, my higher self was right. I had been planning on a trip to the gym. The fact that there was competing desires happening internally proves to me that there is no simple way to define or explain the ego. If anything, I suggest that the ego is defined and characterized by one's desires. For instance, there was a time, not very long ago, when my ego could be described as an alcoholic. There were many other aspects to my ego, but that was the pleasure-seeking desire kind of ran the show. As long as there was a drink to be had and the prospect of sex on the horizon, my ego was free to do other things like write, direct, act in plays, read, watch movies, hike, go to festivals, work as a teacher and a reporter. The list goes on. But if I was without alcohol and if I didn't know where my next tryst was going to come from, my ability to focus on anything else dwindled to zero. My ego would become fully possessed by the need to pursue those desires. Eventually, as will happen with addictions, my physical body could no longer deal with the alcohol. Here's what I learned from recovering from my addictions. The lower ego is like a child or like a puppy. It is in a constant state of desire. In an ideal world, our parents and our culture will provide us with healthy boundaries so we don't do stupid damaging things like ingesting Twizzlers and Mountain Dew for breakfast every day. Our surroundings in an ideal world would support our psychological and spiritual evolution, such that by the time we're adults, our ego would be in right alignment with our four bodies, and they would be adequately governed by the desires of our higher self, which, in turn, would be in tune with the Oversoul, or Source, or God. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we're not living in an ideal world. At least, not yet. The reality is closer to this. We live in the world as hangry children in adult bodies being told by other hangry children in adult bodies how to live. By the way, in case you haven't heard, the word hangry is a word that means anger caused by hunger. The reason why I use it here is because I believe that at the root of all collective and individual anger is that we're all starving for the divine, for the transcendent. We want so badly to be connected to each other in love and harmony. So because that's not the case, an undercurrent of anger vibrates dangerously beneath the surface of all toxic interactions. There is good news, thankfully. Luckily for us, there are plenty of people throughout history who have figured out the rules of the Matrix, so to speak, and because they're super chill and groovy and nice, they shared that knowledge with us. Such people include the Buddha, Jesus Christ, Lao Tzu, Kuan Yin, Paramahansa Yogananda, Madame Blavatsky, and much, much more. Today, there are literally thousands of realized beings who openly share their wisdom with humanity. You can even find some of them on YouTube. But I suggest the best way to connect with them is through meditation and prayer. I have immersed myself in many of these teachings, and although I make no claim to being a fully realized being, I'm a lot more realized than I've ever been in this lifetime. I have stuff to share with anyone who wants to try it out for themselves. While there are philosophies and religions that warn against the dangers of desire, and some even insist that desire is the root of all suffering, I argue that the desire force is an essential ingredient in the recipe for building a human, or any life form for that matter. The trouble starts with desire when people don't know themselves, and consequently become servants of an ego that's been programmed over time to behave in one of two ways: to seek out only what feels good, and to actively avoid what feels bad. In such cases, desire becomes conflated with pleasure and pain, and the meaning of life is reduced to a pursuit of the superficial at the expense of soul evolution. Buddhism and modern psychology inform us that suffering occurs when one's desires are not met. The more attached one becomes to desire, the greater the suffering, when that desire is unfulfilled or thwarted. For an example, consider a drug addict who has run out of money. There's a good chance that he may turn to crime to get his desire fulfilled. The convenience store owner who is getting held up by the drug addict may be compelled with the desire to protect his business. If his desire to protect his business and retaliate against the drug addict is stronger in that moment than his desire to avoid shooting a fellow human being, then the store owner might very well take a life against his better judgment. Even if the law protects the store owner from being prosecuted for taking a life, the store owner will have that killing on his conscience the rest of his life. This scenario is all too common in our world today, and in this hypothetical instance, tragedy occurred because both human beings were acting not from a place of presence and awareness, as described by the likes of Eckhart Tolle and Rupert Spira, but from a place of ego-desire programs. Most metaphysical schools of thought teach that, along with the physical body, each human being has 3 subtle bodies. They're subtle in that they can't be detected by the 5 senses or measured by physical instruments. They are essentially non-physical. The subtle bodies are differentiated as the energy body, the emotional body, and the mental body. The desire force is active in all 4 bodies, which can often lead to internal conflict. Remember the example from earlier when I narrated the internal conflict between desiring an espresso versus the desire to have a more healthier drink. The more we become aware of the needs of the subtle bodies and align them with the needs of the physical body, the easier it is to control our desires. Your emotional body might have been triggered by an insensitive comment from your friend while you were hanging at the pub, so to lick your wounds, the desire for ice cream became activated. For a long time, eating ice cream and streaming episodes of Friends was your go-to mindlessness practice for making you feel a little better. However, you're older now and your gut does not respond well to lactose. In fact, if you just eat 1 spoonful of ice cream, you'll wake up the next morning with bloating and inflammation. You know this about yourself. And yet, there's that pint of Ben & Jerry's cookie dough ice cream staring at you, nay, pleading with you to pop the lid and peel back the plastic and bury that big, strong stainless steel ice cream scooper into the cool, smooth, heavenly, creamy, joy-giving flesh. In such a situation, which desire wins out? So, for this last part of the show, I'm going to read some quotes about desire. And we will start with a quote by Einstein that goes like this: "A human being is a part of the whole called, by us, universe. A part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." So that was Albert Einstein. Very interesting. Here's one from Robert Frost. "Love is an irresistible desire, to be irresistibly desired." This is Frederica Garcia Lorca. "To burn with desire and keep quiet about it is the greatest punishment we can bring ourselves." Here's one from Sylvia Plath. "I desire the things which will destroy me in the end." This one's from Maya Angelou. "The desire to reach for the stars is ambitious. The desire to reach hearts is wise." This is from Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich. "The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desire brings weak results, just as a small fire makes a small amount of heat. This one's from Frank Herbert from Chapter House Dune. Seek freedom and become captive of your desires. Seek discipline and find your liberty. Leonardo da Vinci. Study without desire spoils the memory, and it retains nothing that it takes in. And the rest are from Rumi. These are some really good ones. I once had 1,000 desires, but in my one desire to know you, all else melted away. Everyone has been made for some particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in every heart. The desire to know your own soul will end all other desires. Paradise is surrounded by what we dislike. The fires of hell are surrounded by what we desire. Your radiance shines in every atom of creation, yet our petty desires keep it hidden. And so it is that both the devil and the angelic spirit present us with objects of desire to awaken our power of choice. Alright, so that is all for today's show, and may you have a great rest of your week.